All right, here we go, coming to you live via the magic of satellite, all the way from Centennial, Colorado. My name's Eric, personal trainer. We're going to go ahead and jump right in. So when we think about exercises, one of the questions that every personal trainer gets is, what are the best exercises for me to be doing? And very simply, the answer is whichever ones you need the most. So which ones do you need the most? Well, that depends on who you are, what's going on in your body, and what your goals are. But one that generally it's hard to work too much on is the squat. And the reason for that is that there are a lot of variations to the squat. There are a lot of different things you can do within the movement to target different muscle groups. And really, there are no goals that it's not extremely helpful for. So if you want to lose a lot of weight, a squat gets a lot of muscles firing and burning calories, including some very big ones. So by cubic space taken, the glute complex is the largest muscle in the body. The quads are second. The lats are third. The hamstrings are fourth. On a good squat, you can engage all of those muscles very, very easily. The same thing if you want to get very strong, you're engaging a lot of big movers all at once. No extra purchase necessary. If we want to add tone, we're doing both. And when we're trying to put on a lot of muscle and get that super beefy look, one of the cool things about the squat is that it's going to help your body produce a lot of extra insulin and a lot of extra growth hormone. It's not going to produce more insulin, I'm sorry. It's going to produce a lot more growth hormone. And it's going to enable you to eat more food, which goes directly into muscle, which becomes size. So there's a lot of things that a good squat can do for you, depending on how you do it and kind of if you know what you're doing. And here today, I'm gonna show you what you're doing. So the first thing is we're thinking about the preliminary stuff that you need to know about a squat to engage it properly in your body. And that is that a squat done wrong can be hard on your low back. If we arch, that's not good for you. You get that stripper booty, not good. If we get your hips turned the wrong way, they can put a lot of load on your hips and be not good. If your knees get too far forward, this can be very hard on either your knees or your feet or both. It can cause a lot of damage. A good squat, though, is safe for your back, hips, knees, and feet. There are people doing thousands and thousands of pounds on squats. Well, I guess a little over 1,000, but people squat 1,000 pounds is not a problem. Guys that are 7 feet tall squat, it's not a problem. You can do it if you understand the mechanics that you're employing. The first thing that you want to bear in mind in a squat is that you want your weight kind of over your ankle, not all the way back on the back of your heel, but toward the back half of your foot. So you're gonna push your hips back, just maybe an inch, not a whole lot. From there, you're gonna squeeze your big toe into the ground hard, like you're trying to pinch your shoe, and push your pinky toe out while maintaining that squeeze. At this point, you should be feeling your feet working real nice against the floor. Your feet, to start with, going to be about shoulder width apart, pointed straight forward. This isn't going to be true for everybody, and I'll talk about those differences in just a second. From there, with your hips back, your knees will be slightly bent because of how you're holding your feet, and you're going to drop your hips straight down. What you can see is that at the end of that movement, my back is straight, my shins are straight, and they're pretty much parallel. There's a little bit of not parallel, and that's because of the difference in the length of my spine to the length of my femur. And so, again, sticking my arms out for balance, big squeeze with my feet, down, up, everything staying nice and clean. You keep your eyes pretty much straight forward to where your head is at. So one of the things, if you lifted weights at all in high school, is your coach told you, look up. And that's really dumb. And he's, well, he didn't mean it to be dumb. It's really, really old school. But now we know it's bad practice. Here's why. When we look up, it pulls your back flat. But if you look up too much, it pulls your low back out of alignment too. And we don't want to do that. So straight ahead, or even a little bit down, but you also don't want to bend your neck. You want to stay pretty much straightforward. Now, just as there are different lengths to the spine and to the femurs, there are different ways that the hip socket fits in the joint. And that's going to be one of the first things we want to address is how wide apart your feet should be. Now, the good news is it's not the biggest deal in the world if you mess this up, as long as your technical adjustment matches. What you want to do is you want to feel comfortable being able to go about parallel or a little bit to either side. Some people, their femurs are long and their hips sit fairly wide in the socket. For them, a wider squat is going to be beneficial. What they want to make sure they do, point the toes out about 30 to 40 degrees from the body. You don't want to go the full 45, but you probably want to go 30 to 40 degrees. The mechanical thing that that's going to do differently for us is that's going to push, and your shins are going to stay straighter, which means your back has to stay taller. Same amount of push back at the hips, but you won't finish here, you'll finish up here. It's very easy to get a little extra squeeze in the glute that way, even if your femurs and your spine don't necessarily call for that adjustment. So a lot of times when I'm working with somebody and we're trying to get a little extra glute engagement, or I want them feeling a little more through here or feeling a little more work through the hip, even if that's not a necessary alignment for them, I'll have them do that, because that's really, 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 really helping them force this engagement. You get a little bit in the quads. As you do this, you want to make sure to keep your knees pressed out. Think about pushing the floor apart underneath your feet. That's going to do it for you, and you're going to get additional engagement in the glute as well. Squeezing up. In the event that that's not the alignment that your body needs, you may feel some discomfort, like a little, not a pinch, but almost like a pinch in your hips. More like a strong stretch in those little bitty muscles, and that's fine. By the same token, if your femurs are a little shorter, you may have to bring your squat in just a little bit, more kind of between shoulder and hip width. Some people can do a full campfire squat. In my opinion, for most people, the risk of injury doing that outweighs the benefits. So we're going to focus on the narrow squat for now. It's just you let your hands fall to your sides, kind of hit you in the pockets instead of brushing lightly against the fingertips or being full stop. It's just kind of a bump. And those feet are going to be pointed straight forward. From there, again, squeezing the ground with the big toes, spreading with the pinkies, poking back. And when we have that more narrow alignment, your hips are going to come forward more, and your torso with it. As your knees come forward, what you want to be mindful of, and this is with any squat variation, what you want to be mindful of is whether you're feeling pain, discomfort in the knee, and whether you're able to stay with your weight on the back of your foot. If you come too far forward, you're going to get shearing force in your knee. And that's true with your weight back, and that's true with your weight forward. If you feel pressure in the actual knee joint, that indicates that we're doing something a little bit wrong and that we want to change that up. We definitely don't want you to hurt your knees. So if you're feeling that shearing force in your knees, that's not good. The first thing that you want to check when you feel that is, am I bending my knees before I bend my hips? Body is a wonderful, complicated machine built over tens of thousands of years. Like the way we beat the dinosaurs is we solve problems. And the way we solve problems most efficiently is that everything from the ground up wants to do its part whenever we have to work very hard or run very fast. When we move the hips first, we get the big muscles working. Then we start to bend, and the little muscles can focus on doing what they do. So if you're feeling tension in your knees and you've got your toes squeezed and you're feeling that your weight is on your heels, focus on making that 2 separate movements. And again, your hips aren't going back the whole time. Just pop and drop. That's all it takes. What else? Oh. As you can see, the knee comes in front of the toe on the narrow squat, even though that's considered a harmful position. As long as you're not feeling strain or a lot of load on the, again, in the knee joint, like beside the kneecaps, you're probably okay there. Don't push it, don't get cocky, but it's typically okay to let your knees come in front of your toes. I mean, you can feel, we can all do this and not feel pain. There's no magic thing about your knee going beyond right there that makes it dangerous. What makes it dangerous? Loading it up too much when these muscles need to be carrying more of the load. I want to be careful how I say this next part. When you think about what squat variation you need to think about the length of your femurs. You need to think about the length of your torso. A longer femur probably needs a wider squat for them. And that's because their knees have the most to move anyway, and that's going to engage the quad. A shorter femur going to have a shorter lever here, so engaging the quad is going to be easy. You need your feet closer together to get good engagement in your glutes. If you have a longer torso, it's going to be a very similar idea. A longer torso is going to have a harder time not leaning forward, whereas a shorter torso is going to have to put a little bit more work into it. So a longer torso needs that wide squat so that you can keep it more upright. Shorter torso could go a little bit narrower and be functionally fine. Another word on knee pain, just real quick. Pain, let me show you here. I don't know if you can see it real well, but pain in the knee joint is bad. Pain right above the knee, pain is bad. But when you feel this, you feel discomfort in there, that's the insertion point of the quad. You want that to be working. That's protecting your knee. So bad, not necessarily bad. Now, in thinking about squats, really in thinking about any exercise, we want to think about why the technical component matters. And that is because it's, first of all, it's your first line of defense against injury. Technically, solid squats are safer, speaking in terms of biomechanics, than are technically incorrect squats. Because as we've discussed in depth now, they load the body up correctly so that the biggest muscles can do the most work with the least strain on joints. So if you got your feet engaged and your feet are spreading apart so that your knees want to push out a little bit and not let them come in, and your glutes are engaged and you're keeping your torso at the right angle, that's safer because everything's working together to keep whatever you're squatting moving correctly. So you want to have a really good body weight squat to start. For safety, certainly, but also for your ability to move forward with any given exercise. Now, in theory, whenever you do an exercise, you're thinking about, how do we progress this exercise? What's the next thing that we do to make this exercise a little bit harder or a little bit more effective? What is the way that I can force my body to handle this challenge so that I can put my body in a position to handle a slightly more aggressive challenge? That's the idea behind weight training. It's not about moving weight. There's a place for that. It's not a useless goal, but ultimately the goal of any exercise is, what do I need to do to put myself in a better position to check body to take on a more complicated task, be that through strain and intensity or through difficulty. If you can't do a proper body weight squat for whatever reason, but you can do a good squat with weight, what you're doing is you're deploying your body's ability to leverage a position. When we have weight on our back, if you can't get here, but you can get there, that means you're using your hamstrings and your quads to push the weight here, and then just driving up with your glutes. That's not a squat. It'll work. A lot of people can do it. It can be hard on your low back, but it's not that solid squat that does all those good things for us. This is kind of true with any exercise. If you can't do it with good form, with no weight, an ability to do it with using the weight for some kind of external mechanical advantage, which is very rarely the point of any exercise. Once you've gotten good at the body weight squat, and you have just really excellent body weight squats, and everything works very nicely in unison, and you don't have to think a ton about it. Like, this should be, I don't want to say second nature, but this should be not something that's immensely complicated. You should be able to listen to what someone's saying while you squat, if not necessarily talk back. Then we can think about some ways to make it more interesting. The first way is we take a resistance band. I'm going to use the red one tonight because it shows up a little bit better. I do like the loop this, but you can do it with the handle bands. They're just, I feel like the load's a little bit different. What you would do, step on the band so that it's kind of right under the tie on your shoelace. Pull it up so that it kind of touches between your chin and your clavicle, wherever that point may be. And you want to push your elbows forward and in so that the band isn't raking on your arms. It's staying nice and correct. From there, push back, squat, come up. The magic trick here is that the band stays almost completely vertical as I go up and down. And the better squatting position I find for my body, the more vertical it's going to stay. Why do we go to the band after we go to body weight? What makes this the next most logical progression? As the band gets longer, it represents more pounds of resistance. When it's not longer, it represents less resistance, which means when you're squatting, as you get closer to the bottom of the movement, you have less tension on the band. And as you come up, you have more tension on the band. Coming up is the part of this movement where we're squeezing muscles, where we're getting the most muscle work done. So that's the part where we want to add resistance. And as you get to the top, this is your strongest position. So this enables us to force the strongest parts of your body to work harder while giving the less strong parts of your body a fighting chance. What comes next? Glad I asked. We're going to do what's called a goblet squat next. So you want your hands like this underneath the weight. You don't want to try and hold it here. You want to hold it here. And you want your elbows even with or slightly in front of that weight. What that's going to do, instead of making this muscle hold the weight, it's going to make these muscles and your skeleton hold the weight. And then we can squat and squat. The reason that the goblet squat is different than the banded squat is that gravity is putting the same amount of weight on that guy the whole way up and the whole way down. So when we take the band, let's say we have 40 pounds of resistance in this position, we have 15 or 20 there. With the dumbbell, we have 40 pounds the whole way. So again, don't get cocky. It's okay to go from a band that feels fairly heavy to a dumbbell that feels less heavy through this range, because these muscles are still probably not as strong. They haven't been doing as much work. That's the system. Now, have a wide squat or you're using a wide squat, you want to make sure you can still do a goblet squat. But if you find that difficult on your hips, it's easy sometimes to hold the weight down here. And you're just bringing that weight directly between your feet. This is also nice to do because, as we mentioned, this fires your glutes a little bit more than your quads. And you may remember from the first minute and a half of this presentation, your glutes are a larger muscle capable of greater force production than your quads are. So the heavier weight you can use, because you're not holding it up here, enables you to work your glutes a little bit harder. That's all. What next? Well, we've got some options. There are ways that we can make this tougher. Once we've gotten to where we can reliably do 40-ish pounds with a goblet squat, then it's time to think about holding a barbell. And I don't have a rack to get over or under one. It's really important for safety if you're going to lift any heavy weight that you do have some kind of a rack to hold the bar. You'll grab it with both hands, wider than shoulder width apart. You'll step underneath with both feet. You'll see people do this at the gym. That's dangerous. Right here, underneath both feet. Pick it up. The weight will be, think about the top of your shoulders and not the bottom of your neck. From there, you'll step away from 3 is all you need. There's no reason to do all this shimmying when you have a bunch of weight on your back. 1, 2, 3, get set, pop. This is where some of that work with the bands becomes extra useful. The barbell will stay pretty much vertical the whole time. The functional reason for that is this. A weight held here or a weight held here, or a weight held here can put different strain on my shoulder, my elbow, all of these muscles. But if I drop it from here, or I drop it from here, it's going to fall at the same rate. And that's because gravity is pushing it down the same amount, regardless of where I hold it. So when I get the barbell here, it's putting different strain on my joints, on the parts of my body. I'm not lifting any more weight. We stay here, all of our strain stays nice and clean, and by driving it straight up, we're working directly against gravity. And that's what weightlifting is. It's working directly against gravity. It's taking something going this way and asking it to go that way. I don't have a rack for safety, so I'm going to just use the barbell, which is going to be fairly light. Most barbells weigh 45 pounds. Again, we're right here, poking, dropping, driving. Keeping your eyes more or less directly in front of you, pushing up. If you're doing those by yourself, you want to use clips on the bar, and in the event you get in trouble, you can't get up, throw the weight off your shoulders and step forward. It's important you step forward because you don't know if the weight's going to bounce. If you have a spotter, they can grab the bar and help you get the weight up, or a lot of spotters like to reach kind of underneath the armpits and help pull the lifter up. Regardless of how a spotter helps you, you don't just give up on the weight. You're still pushing up the whole time, working hard. They're just there to help you because if they didn't, you would be stuck down there. That's a barbell back squat. You can load this up pretty heavy. Those guys that are lifting those monster 1,000-pound deadlifts, or I'm sorry, 1,000-pound squats, that's what they're doing. They're here. But it's not the only way to do a squat with a barbell. There's also a front squat. And the way the front squat works is you're going to put the bar, it's onto your shoulders, touching your throat, but not pressing it. And your hands are just kind of there holding it in place. So you want your elbows forward, because if they get here, it'll put a strain on your wrists, and it won't really hold the bar in place. From there, pushing the hips back, we squat down. And this is more like the goblet squat with a heavier weight that we can control. And it's going to force more of this engagement. So back here, you're going to get a little bit more glute. And up here, you're going to get a little bit more quad. Both are very, very useful to have. Now, if you're an athlete, you need to have a lot of strength in each. And I would train both movements whenever you squat. And here's why. Explosiveness from the glute helps drive you forward. And helps drive you up and forward. So for example, a football player needs both of those capacities to get here as quickly as possible. A boxer needs both of those so that he can move this muscle and this muscle in unison. A basketball player needs both. Baseball player, you need to have glute and quad strength. And you don't want them to be on different pages in terms of their capacity. Once we've done that, we can start to think about the most complicated variation of a squat. And it's the one we want to be most careful with because it's the one that has the highest potential for injuries, particularly in the shoulder, but also we see sometimes people do it wrong, hurt their low backs here, and that is an overhead squat. We'll start with body weight. And what you're going to do is hold your hands straight up in the air. up and down the whole time. Pushing back. See how when I push back, my elbows come behind my head? That's because they're staying vertical the whole time. As you can see, it's easy to get the stripper booty there. Want to make sure you don't do that. Keeping the weight again, one clean line between the weight and the middle of that swoosh. Once we've done that, we go to a stick or a PVC pipe. Your hands will be out fairly wide here. Bring it up. And what you're thinking about doing as you do that is grabbing a hold of that broom or that pipe and twisting it like you're trying to bend it in half. Excuse me. Next, we go to the band. Same positioning as before, except once you're here, you push overhead and slightly out. Don't get goofy. Up and out, same position as you were with the broom and with your body weight. And again, it just gets easier as you come down and harder as you go up. Making sure as always that you keep that nice and perpendicular to the ground. Pushing up, pushing out. This is where it can get a little tricky. Get the broom and position the band across it. Now apply some outward tension to the band while applying your twisting tension to the broom. And stepping in, getting into your squatting position. What this does, it doesn't give your hands the freedom to move in a pinch, but it does give your body the uppy-downy resistance. Once we're used to that, we start thinking about weight. And again, can't stress enough, you want to make sure that you're consistently using a weight that your body can handle effectively and with good efficiency, good form, good mechanics. As we go to the dumbbells, at the top, your hands are going to be turned in about 45 degrees, not all the way in, but not all the way out. You're pressed up, and you're really thinking about that. Nice, tall, vertical, straight up and down. Arms out, not locked out. That puts a tremendous strain on the elbow that you'll feel immediately, but just out in a nice, strong position. This is the same concept as with here. It gives you the freedom to make mistakes while forcing you to strengthen those stabilizer muscles, those mistake guard muscles. And it gets you used to the idea of working gravity the whole way up and the whole way down. Once you're good at that, then we can go to the barbell. I'm gonna make sure I don't hit my ceiling finger here. Fairly wide grip again here. There's a place on the bar called a knurlment break, a smooth ring. I like to grip just outside that, but it's wherever it's comfortable. Typically with the help of a squatter or a spotter or by your own strength, you get the bar overhead. From there, same deal, you're prying your hands apart, you're twisting like you're trying to point your palms toward each other, keeping that bar straight up and down over your shoelaces. If you're getting here, Either your torso is forward too far or your arms are back too far. If you're getting here, you're gonna fall over, don't worry, that's real tough to get done. Why should everybody be squatting? Very simply, everyone needs to be able to squat. If you can't squat, you have a hard time getting up and down out of chairs. You'll have a hard time getting up and down off the toilet. You'll have a hard time getting up and down out of bed. All the squats. The ability to squat is a fundamental safety movement, because even though we're not competing with dinosaurs anymore, we still do a lot of this kind of thing, and we need to be able to protect your back. So if you've ever gotten up out of an office chair and gone, oh, my knees, oh, my back, it happens. That's because we're not doing solid lifting. Every year, somebody's going to hear something about lifting with their legs and not their back. And what that means, lift from here, not from here. It's all squatting. Aside from the physiological benefits we talked about earlier, having a squat protects you against some of the things that life works the hardest against us on. How deep should we squat? You want to squat deep within the parameters of your technical abilities. So you're here and it's looking good, and then you have to poke back to keep going any deeper. Don't go that deep. Just go as deep as you can with good form. As you get stronger, you will go deeper. There are people who can squat all the way down to here with solid form with no problem. What a lot of people like to do is get a chair or a stool or something at or slightly above knee height and just squat down until their butt touches it. That lets them know how deep they're coming. If you have access to a mirror or to a camera, you can do the same thing. You can see how deep down you're going, what your form's looking like. In fact, recording this video is going to enable us to go back and see, when did Eric get sloppy? At what point was he going too deep? At what point did he start twerking? At what point did he start kowtowing? At what point was he doing the Bruce Springsteen slide move? I can go back and analyze that because I have video. In mirrors, you want to get kind of an angle where you can see whether or not your knees caving in and whether or not your spine and your shins are staying pretty much even. We don't need to stare a whole lot at the feet. This is an uncommon one. People want to look down, make sure their feet are there. I promise, guys, your feet will be right where you left them. You don't need to check. Eyes forward. We're at slightly to just a tick so you can see a mirror. If you're using a camera to record your exercise, keep your eyes forward. You analyze the squat the way you're actually doing it when you have that form, when you have that technique. The same as you wouldn't take a spelling test and write with your wrong hand. Don't squat and then knowingly put yourself in a bad position to analyze later. One of the things I'm happy to do is, if you take that video, I'll help you analyze it and figure out how to do it better. I'm happy to do that. But if all you're doing is working out on your own, getting these things done all by yourself, you're off to a really, really good start in terms of your fitness journey. And especially under the current circumstances, these crazy times, this is a nice one. Because as you can see, I'm a fitness professional and doing all these squats I'm having a little bit of a hard time breathing. You can get a really, really good workout, an effective squat workout without having an entire gym at your disposal. Get these muscles firing, this working, this working. This will stabilize a little bit as we get to where we're using resistance. This will start working. That's a really good workout for a lot of your body. That's not to say it's the only exercise you should be doing. A lot of people should be doing a lot of exercises, and you don't want to just squat because you don't want your body to get out of proportion. You don't want your quads to be 5 or 6 times stronger than your hamstrings. That puts your hamstrings at risk of injury and your knees at risk of injury because you have a harder time walking with the proper bend in your knee. Your knees are stiffer, and that's gonna make them more injury prone. You want your body to work as a team. Some muscles are supposed to be stronger than others, but there are proportions, and we want these muscles to be strong. We also want these muscles to be strong. So the squat isn't the only exercise you should be doing, but in terms of what exercises should realistically almost everybody be doing, the squat in my mind is a strong candidate, and that's why I started out with this today for the first of these little webinars regarding how to go about doing movement. There will be more to come. I want to go over some other movements with you guys. I want to be as helpful as I can in figuring out how to get through current circumstances without losing your mind, without losing your gym progress, and without just sitting around waiting for this all to be over. So that was the squat. That was the first one. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'll be checking for those here in just a second. Feel free to reach out to me on all my contact information. If you're seeing a recording of this later, it'll be underneath or to the side or somewhere. Just go looking for it. And I want to be as helpful as I can, no matter what.